28-year-old widow Muchaneta Mushipe is a mother of two who, like many women in Zimbabwe, face difficulty in acquiring a piece of land in her name or securing land after the husband dies. African tradition believes that the land belongs to men as they are the breadwinners, and after the death of a male parent, this heritage is passed on to the boy child as the heir apparent.
Murume afa hama dzemurume dzakada kunditorera zvinhu sekuti ivo vanotenda kuti chivanhu chedu chinoti munhu akafa vanofanira kutora zvinhu zvemufi ihama dzemurume veropa rake kwete iwe mutorwa.
Esther Kombwa is a single mother of two who is taking care of her parents and her late brother's two children. Like Muchaneta, she had to challenge the deep-rooted African tradition of shunning single mothers.
Patinoenda kunonyoresa minda kumasabhuku unooneka uchinzi uyai mangwana kana kuti chimbomirai pane zvandiri kuita, asi vanhurume vakangoenda vanokasika kugamuchirwa vachinzwika zvichemo zvavo. Pandiri kurima ndepavabereki nhaka vakatoipa kumwanakomana nechakare, saka inini pangu pakanangana neni handina.
In 2008, Action Aid International Zimbabwe, through funding from the European Commission, commenced the implementation of a 4-year project aimed at empowering vulnerable women in rural communities through land rights. The overall objective of the project was to increase poor women's access to, control over, and ownership of land as a means of improving their livelihood and that of their families. Through this project, the women would gain access to farming inputs, knowledge, skills, and better paying markets. Women are encouraged to form groups, the Rural Women's Assemblies, through which they share information and experiences. The Rural Women Assembly is also a platform for women to embark on self-sustenance projects and to act as support and safe lobby groups, thereby amplifying the women's voices. Tandiwe Chidavarume is the Women's Land Rights Project Manager. Together with Nanganidzai Makoho, the project officer, they have been the field officers implementing the project since its inception 4 years ago.
Although Zimbabwe has had a land reform, a massive land reform program, women did not benefit from that program. Only 20% of women got land registered in their own names, in their own rights, as beneficiaries of that program. They don't have control over the pieces of land they work on. They don't have control over the produce that come out of the fields they work in.
The project objective is premised on the need of the Zimbabwean government, on its commitment to meet the targets which are in the Millennium Development Goals, particularly on poverty eradication and gender empowerment. The response in the communities by the local chiefs or the headmen, they felt as it was a challenge to them when they had grown up in such a patriarchal system where they viewed as a taboo when a woman asks for a piece of land.
The Women's Land Rights Program educated women on their constitutional right to land and encouraged the women to demand this right by confidently approaching the local leadership, the chiefs and headmen who are the custodians of the land.
Kututirwe munda kana murume akafa munda ndewako unorima munda iwoyo takapiwa masimba ekuti munhu anoita adonga watonga aiwa ifunde redu tinomudzinga enda unorima munda iwoyo.
After getting the land, the women were taught conservation farming techniques and were given inputs which as groups were supposed to pass on after harvesting. 52-year-old Lindiwe Mandire is a widow who looks after 4 dependents. She stays in Ward 10 in Chiwundura, 30 kilometers north of Zimbabwe's third largest city, Gweru. Lindiwe is the leader of the Rural Women's Assembly Group.
Munongozwa kuti kana chirongwa chichitanga kupinda neculture yedu yechivanhu kuti mudzimai haafaniri kuve nevoice. Vanhu vakatanga vachita zvishoma nezvishoma. Inini pakashaika murume wangu 2001 pamba pangu paihwisa tsitsi paka pasina chinhu. Vanhu vaikachema inini panzvimbo kuti vacheme murume wangu. No saka kufurikudza nezvidzidzo zvatakaona kuAction Aid kuti aiwa munhu haufaniri kugarira maoko, unofanira kuita zvimwe zvinhu. Zvidzidzo zvakaita seconservation farming yatinoti dhiga udli. Kuti nyangwe da usina ng'ombe, usina gejo, so mudzimai haungagoni kuita zhara. Unofanira kunonga ndohwa yako, woita compost yako, wochera makomba ako, wofeeda, wodzvara.
Like Lindiwe, Nyaladzi Nkomo benefited from the training on the conservation farming methods they received from Action Aid through the local government agri-tax offices. Nyaladzi farms in Ward 15 in Wubi district, 80 kilometers north of the country's second largest city, Bulawayo. Nyaladzi explains how conservation has improved her yield farming in one of the driest regions of the country.
Conservation farming safundiswa ngokugebha amagodi, sifaka le mulching ukwenzela ukuthi sibambe amanzi njengoba indawo yethu iyindawo engabambe amanzi engela zulu elinengi. Sisebenza amakhuba, intambo, sigebha amagodi, simeasure ama-measurements esawafundisa ukuthi simele simeasure njani. Sisebenzisa intambo lamakhuba bese sifaka lo mquba wenkomo. Nxa ukuthi sile fertilizer lathu sayifaka kodwa siyandisa ukusebenzisa umquba wenkomo. Kuqala sasingatholi isivuno esiphezulu kodwa kwakathesi isivuno sethu siphezulu. Njalo siyabe singasebenzisanga izinto eziningi ezidurayo. Lenhlanyelo yankhona iyabinlutshwana.
Priska Chikwe is the breadwinner of 5 children. She benefited from joining the Rural Women's Assembly in Shurugwi's Ward 5. The skills, knowledge, and inputs she received from Action Aid have increased her yields, and as a result, her livelihood has improved. Women are encouraged to produce crops for sale and not merely for consumption. Priska has managed to buy livestock from the sales of excess produce.
Ini pandakakohwa chibagwe last year chedhigauli tadziswa neAction Aid ndakaona matani matatu, kunzungu ndikawana 35 bags ari ma50 kg, nyemba ndikawana 4 bags ari ma50 kg. Ndadero ndakatora chibagwe changu ndikatengesa ma50 kg 6, ndikatenga mbudzi dzangu 3. Ndikabva ipapo ndikatora nyemba ndikanotenga ma2 in 1 mashanu. Ndikabva pakutora nzungu ndokunotenga matipoti nemakapu zvangu zvomba. Iko zvino baba chaivo kandikangoenda buda ivo vakangoita 5 minutes ndisipo, foni inodomanya kunge handisi kuti vane votsvakei nokuti vava kudondikudza nebasa randinoita.
Cynthia Nkomo and Dominica Shumba are Agri-Tax Extension Officers working with farmers in Wubi and Shurugwi districts respectively. They also benefited from the training of trainers on conservation agriculture, post-harvesting, marketing, business management, and women's rights provided by Action Aid.
Ukajompo i-conservation agriculture omama baqalisa ukuyizwa nge-Action Aid. Kuyikuthi sasibizwe ku-training of trainers River of Life. Yikho lapho esafunda khona ngogajompo, sasesibuya ke sazofundisa ama-farmers lawo ukuthi ugajompo wenziwa njani.
Madzimai improve pa land utilization nekuti mundaika kaduku kanenge akawana ari kukohwa mvura nako, ari kurima mbeu dzenzungu dzatakapiwa kuAction Aid nebeans. Dzimwe nambo vanotoita intercropping kurati kamunda ikako kachaita zvinhu zviviri, mabagwe netoisa beans nenyemba. Zvose izvozvo imbeu dzatinofarira nokuti dzinovaka miviri yavana.
In Gwanda's Datata Ward 2, the Rural Women's Assemblies received farming inputs for the first 2 years, but due to low rainfall, the yields realized were insignificant. After consultation with the women, Action Aid provided 50 goats, which the women pass on after each goat gives birth to a female kid.
In Matabeleland, it was a challenge because of the issues of climate change, their rainfall patterns have changed, the amount of rainfall have dropped, such that the first 2 consecutive years, they yielded close to nothing. So when we came in and asked for their comments on how the program or the project was moving on, they said we need small livestock than the seeds which we are giving them.
Today, the women have gathered for a goat passing on ceremony. The second group of 50 women will have each member receiving a female goat, which they will rear until it gives birth, then they pass it on. 60-year-old widow Flora Sibindi looks after 13 dependents, 12 grandchildren, and a boy she adopted after he was abandoned by his parents. The Rural Women's Assembly initiative has provided Flora with a source of strength and income.
Ngabona ukuthi uhlale ekhaya akusoze kungisize. Ukuthi impela ecebo lami ngedwa angisoze ngiphakamisa imuli lengayitshiyelwa nguyise. So ngase ngibona ukuthi ngisondele phansi kwabanye kuzangisiza. Lami sengikwazi engikwenzayo. Lami sengilolutho. Lami sengibona ukuthi lokhu kufanele kube ngokwami. Ngisize laba abazukule enhlala labo. Kanti izolo bevele bengakhanda ukuthi ngumfelokazi lokhu akulanto okuzayenza. Vela kwazi lutho. Akuzazuzani. Kade sebengibona ngenxa ukuthi kade sengilembuzi semfundile ukuthi umuntu ongumama vele ufanele aziphilise njani.
Nomsandlovu is another beneficiary of the goat passing on project.
Ngibona impilo isitshintshe kakhulu ekuzuzeni kwami imbuzi lekulimeni kwami ikakhulu embuzini. Bengingela sibaya esami esithi mina kodwa namhla lami ngilesibaya. Khathesi imbuzi zilemazinyane siyakwanisa ukuthi sisenge. Labantwana besiya esikolo bavuka betsheba ngochago ukade eqala bebetsheba ngembhida ingilala futhi.
Action Aid decided to complement the success realized through conservation farming by funding various self-sustenance projects. A $500 revolving fund was introduced per ward as women undertook various money-making initiatives. They ventured into horticulture, piggery, poultry, uniform making, bag making, and cool drink making schemes.
If a woman demands on a piece of land or have access on that piece of land, she should also have the actual resources to effectively and efficiently utilize that piece of land. So it was then when we asked for other funds from CEDA and NISA in Netherlands, who again gave us the revolving fund, which is now one of the bases where the other projects like poultry farming, bag making coming out from.
In Ward 2, Goneso District, the Rural Women's Assembly set up a piggery project run by a group of 5 women. They are trained on rearing pigs by veterinary personnel and work within the district, as the group leader Lydia Kakono explains.
Tine hombe i3 mama iese ko ya zvivana zvatisamuke izvo i18 kozoya tuvana tudikidiki kuti twane 2 weeks i8 takatanga tine nguruve 4 hadzi 3 mukono 1 tatova nedzimwe 2 dzatakauraya tikatengesa nyama lokali tawana mari yedu takakwanisa kubhadhara vana school fees tikakwanisa kutenga kana mabhusi kana bhutsu dzevana zvokuti zvakutonyadza kuti mwana anoenda kuchikora asina kana uniform kana ini mukangonitarisa ndirava vakatoshambidzika kubva ipapo pekuti unenge watosumudzirika takutoziva kunowanikwa mari kunowanikwa nyama pane kumirira ungonotenga kubhucha.
To ensure continuity and sustainability of the piggery project, Lydia's group has passed on 2 pigs to another group of 5 women.
Nguruve dzedu idzi dzabereka kudaro takawanawo rimwe gurupu ratakabereka ndobva tavapa nguruve 2 semadzimai taona kuti vamwe vedu vari kuzvishuvira vari kuzvida.
Another group in the same district is venturing in poultry. These broilers are what remain of 100 birds the women started off with. They have, in the last 6 weeks, sold most of the birds and slaughtered some for their own consumption. Constance Murasiranwa explains.
tichiti kamari kashoma tichiunganidza tobva tatenga huku dzedu tichichengeta. Takava takuremerwa nechikafu, Action Aid vakatipa mari tikapfuya huku dzedu dzikararama dzese tikatengesa. Munoziva mukurarama tinodawo kudya nyama, hatichaswere tichimhanya neraini kunotsvaga nyama. Kana tangofungwawo nyama tinotorawo huku dzedu dziya todya. Ivo vemunharaunda vanouyawo vachitenga.
Successful conservation farmer Nyala Zinkomo has not missed the opportunity to run her own poultry project.
Ku project ethu abantu abalapha bakhanya bayasihawukela kakhulu ngoba sekuzinkukhu zodwa labo sebelandela khona kwesikwenzayo. Okutshengisa ukuthi into esiyenzayo inhle abantu bayihawukela. Esikukhangeleka kakhulu kathesi sinanzela ukuthi imali yethu esizuza isesencane. Kodwa siyazama ukuthi njengoba singu6 ngokuya kwesikhathi besifisa ukuthi sibe lamagroup amabili sibe yi3 ukwenzela iprofit yethu ingani itiqaqa mbijana ngoba iprofit esithola incane.
Figelepi Bishop is a farmer in Ward 15 Bubi district who, like other women in her group, have benefited from the farming of horticulture produce such as vegetables, tomatoes and onions.
Thina sesisanelisa ukuthi somise imbhida yethu ngendlela ephezulu sisebenzisa isolar dryer. Isolar dryer isomisela kuhle izilimo zethu sisenza imfushwa ngoba imifushwa yethu iyoma kuhle ilokhe ilemisoco eyeneleyo kayiphephuki njalo ingatshiswa ngalilanga. Iyoma siyigcine ilokhe ilokudla okweneleyo kuyo. Kuyasincedisa kakhulu ezimulini zethu ngoba abanye nxa sokusebusika babe bengaselazo izithebo kodwa thina siyabe silazo izithebo zethu ezilungiswe ngendlela efanele ezisincedisa ezimulini zethu.
White sugar 25 kgs.
In 2011, Action Aid provided funds to a cool drink making group in Makoni district in Manicaland province. The group had already been running at a small scale and the funds by Action Aid scaled up their capacity.
Pamwedzi kana zvinhu zvedu zvichifamba sezvakaita ari mazuva ekutengeswa kwemakotoni nechi anenge akatowanda togona kugadzira kuma 1200 bottles pamwedzi. Mamwe acho tinosapurayawo muzvikoro kana kuine masports kana kuine kana munoitawo madare anounganidzwa nana Mudhumeni nana tinoendawo nawo ipapo tichitengesa. Patakatanga project yedu takaishanda kwe8 months ndopatakapanana $40. Vamwewo vakafara vakatenga midziyo vanga vasinawo maplates nekupawo vana zvikafu, vamwe vachitengawo mablankets chaiwo. Ndokubva taramba tichikontinya neyakanga yasara shoma yacho. Kubva tazogowana manje apa takapanana $30.
The Rural Women's Assembly engage in exchange programs where groups from various districts converge on one ward to share knowledge and experience.